Hi, and welcome to episode 102. We're going to be looking today in this episode at freelancer tips for beginners and how to find a freelancer.
Yes, very good. So we've recovered from last week's little mishap with our computer screens, which was an interesting way to finish off episode 101, where basically the computer screens, which sit behind the camera here, completely fell down on top of us.
Knocking a glass of water
all over Emily's feet and
smashed.
So anyway, that was a good finish to the episode, wasn't it? So if you missed that one, you can go back and have a look at that on YouTube. It's I
really wouldn't.
Do some funny facials and a bit of swearing, but that's okay. So that was last week. But what have we been up to this week? We been painting a bit of the inside of the house, which has been interesting, but it's a really good way of freshening up a room, isn't it? You get a bit of touch.
Our bedroom is now what was our office room, and it's lovely. Loving it.
Yeah, no, it's come up well.
Yeah, we've gone for a really deep green on the back wall, a bit of a feature wall.
Very cozy.
Very cozy.
Yeah. No, it's come up well. So we can highly recommend a bit of internal renovations if you're looking to freshen up the house.
Yeah.
But anyway, let's get on with this episode. So, this week we wanted to follow through on what we talked about last week, which was freelancers and why you should potentially start to look to use them right from the beginning of your online journey. And this week we really wanted to touch on, I guess, some 5 tips of if you decide to use a freelancer or to go to outsourcing, 5 tips on what you should basically do and what you shouldn't do, so it can get you off to the best possible start in your sort of search for a freelancer. So without further ado, tip number 1. One thing that I had an issue with in the beginning when I started using contractors and freelancers was the pricing. There's a whole price range, and it's very tempting to go for the cheapest one. And normally what they will do on any of the platforms like Upwork or Fiverr, they'll show you the hourly rate. And some people have it on there for $2 to $3 an hour. And then that goes right up to over $100 an hour, depending on what the person is doing and what their skills are and what their experience is. And one thing I did was I went for the cheapest ones. And that is something I'd probably say to avoid. I think going for sort of a mid-range pricing, you're going to get the best of both worlds. You're going to still get value for money, but you're going to get someone who's a bit more experienced, and you'll probably get a lot better result. The problem with going with someone cheap is they may just be starting out, and they might not have the experience and skills that are needed to complete the task that you want.
So I suppose it's how important the task is.
Yeah, that's a good point. Like if you're going for something like developing an app, for example, you want to probably spend a bit of money on getting someone good, because otherwise your app's going to have all sorts of problems and errors that you have to come back and rework. Yeah. Whereas if you're just getting someone to design a logo for you, maybe that's when you go for someone cheaper, because, to be honest, there's not a lot of skill required in designing a logo versus building an app. So it's very much, you're right. It depends what the task is. So good point. So tip number 2 would be, and this is a little bit more work than what some of the platforms will lead you to believe. A lot of the freelancers out there will have references. So like they'll have previous jobs they've done, the person will have written in and put a comment about how well they went. That's all fine. A lot of the time, though, these can be a bit biased, and the freelancers talk to them and say, "Can you give me a good review?" and all this sort of thing. So
and a bit misleading as well sometimes, because one person might have found what they did okay, but then you might not either. So I mean,
and that's the thing. So you want to read more than one review. And one thing I would probably do, depending on again how much you're going to use this person, in your work, if it's just a one-off task, it's probably not as important. But if you're planning on using them, over a prolonged period or over multiple jobs, I would actually try and get them to give you a reference contacts. So it could be an email address or a phone number of someone they've worked for before. And I would like you to contact that person and actually get it from the horse's mouth, so to speak, in terms of what that freelancer was like and how they performed, and did they achieve the
it's a genuine review then.
Well, you do.
It's not the person writing their own.
Absolutely. And this is the problem. There is an element of non-genuine reviews online, and we all know this.
Yeah.
But you want to protect yourself, and by contacting that employer directly, you actually get around any of that sort of bogus situation where you might be reading false reviews. So that's our second tip. Third tip would be, if you're not going to use a platform, and I'll talk about just some of these platforms at the end of this episode, but if you're not using a platform and you're actually going out and finding a freelancer on your own, then there's a couple of things I would generally recommend you do. The first is a contract. So have set up a contract with them which outlines all of the details, the monetary terms, the all of the information and process that will go through with the job. And there's heaps of standard templates for that. We've got a template on our website, emilyandblair.com, that you can use. But I think it's one of those ways to protect yourself as well.
Yeah. Well, are there different lengths of contracts there? Because you could do a short term, if it's someone new you've not used before, you could do a short term contract and then try them out so you can actually get out of it if you don't like them.
Yeah, so all contracts will have an out clause, or a termination clause. So that's, if it doesn't go right, how do you get out of it? Or vice versa, if the freelancer doesn't actually like you or like the way you work, they want to get out of it. So it protects both parties, but it just sets in place some rules around how your relationship with the freelancer is going to go. So yeah, you're right. You can have quite long-term contracts, which are generally a bit more detailed, or you can just have a short-term contract, which generally won't have a whole lot of the detail that the long-form ones do. So it's basically, again, comes back to your first point, is working out what the task is that you're going to get them to do. If it's a simple logo design, you probably don't need a long-form contract to do that. The second thing that I would always have in there with any freelancer is a non-disclosure agreement. So they're often abbreviated as NDAs. So an NDA is pretty much, in short, saying that the freelancer will protect any of the IP of yours that they use, and vice versa. So they won't go and tell anyone else about any of the information of your business, because when you're working with a freelancer, you've got to give them certain information about your business to allow them to be able to complete the task. But you want to protect that information. You don't want them spreading that around the internet or whatever. And so NDA is really important. So there's those two things. Make sure you get those signed up before you start. Yeah,
if you do it through like a platform, have you got some backup?
So it's a good point. A lot of the platforms like Fiverr and Upwork and things will have these contracts in place as part of their standard sort of setup. So you don't actually then need to go and get, your own agreement and things. It's all kind of set up in the background. So you've got ways of terminating and all that.
So presumably you pay for that.
You do, yeah. Well, you pay for it in your fees when so for example, all platforms are different. So, but say, for example, Upwork, you'd go on Upwork and you find a contractor, and when they do the tasks, you pay through the Upwork program, so you don't pay directly to the freelancer,
and they'll take
take a cut out of that before they pay.
But then they're providing you with some security, though.
They're providing you with a platform to find the freelancer. They're providing with all the agreements and everything. It's a really nice and smooth way of doing it. So I certainly would recommend using these platforms, but they are all a little bit different. So we'll touch on a few of those in a minute. So the fourth tip would be, and it doesn't matter what you're doing, whether you're finding one yourself or whether you're using a platform, you need to have a clear written brief, okay? Now, that brief will outline what the tasks are that you want them to complete, what the outcomes are that you want them to complete, and what the time frame is that you want them to stick to. So, for example, it could be that you want them to design a logo for you. The outcome is that you want a good logo with, that meets your brand colors.
You might even want them to do a few.
Yeah, or it could be a range of logos. Yeah, so that could be the thing. You could say, right, I want the outcome is 3 logos for me to choose from. They've got to all reach my brand, meet my brand colors. They've all got to be, presented in a way that I can use them on Facebook, on my website, on, my business cards. So different graphic levels, so that sort of stuff. So it's just outlining all the outcomes that you want.
So that when it comes back to you, you've got a checklist and can check whether they've actually done everything that you're paying them to do, and that
exactly. So that they've reached those outcomes. The other thing is also that way it's very clear between what you want and what they understand you want. So that's the main thing, because the worst experience I've had with freelancers is when the brief isn't clear. They think you want something else that you don't want, and then they come up with this whole different set of sort of results, and you're sort of going, well,
and then they'd probably blame it on you as well for not being
giving you
clear.
the right brief. So I can't sort of underline that enough. You've got to make sure your brief is well set up, and also timings. Like, put some time frames in place. Freelancers are busy. That you're generally not going to be their only client. They're working for another whole series of other businesses. So, you need to know how busy they are and come to agreement with them about when, they're going to deliver what you need. And that might be the deciding factor of whether you use that freelancer or another one. If they're going to take 2 months to deliver a logo, you might go with someone else who can take a week. So that's sort of tip number 5. And the final tip, tip number 4, final tip number 5 is actually don't be afraid to test them out. So, and this is particularly for that longer form contractor, where you're going to use them over and over again, or you're going to use them on a big, long task. Just try them out. To sort of set up a small brief about a certain part of what you're going to get them to do, and get them to complete that part first and assess it and make a call on whether you're going to continue to use them or whether you're going to terminate that and move on with another freelancer. Because the worst thing you can do is get in deep with someone and then just find that you've got no out, and the result is a bit of a nightmare. You've spent all this money and all this time, and then you've basically got to go back to the start and begin again with someone else. So so that would be
it's a bit disheartening, I guess, as well.
It's just it just slows up your growth and your progress so much. So those 5 tips are quite important. If you stick with those, you'll probably avoid most of the issues I've ever had with freelancers. And so stick with those and have a look on our website for some of the templates. We'll put a link in there to our templates page and our checklist page, because there's some stuff in there which you can use around freelancers and contracts and NDAs. You'll find really useful, and then you don't have to go and make them up yourself.
They're really good ones. They're really clear as well, really set out
just straightforward and easy to use. So the final thing I wanted to touch on today is just where do you find freelancers. So there's 3 sort of categories of where you can get work contracted out from. The first is sort of general platforms, and so that's where you've got the websites like Fiverr, Upwork, 99 Designs, and and the list goes on. There's a number of them. These are the main ones. They're really good because, as we talked about, they're a platform. You log in, you can search freelancers by keywords, so you can put in their software app that you want a developer to do a software app for you. It'll bring up all of those results. Then they'll recommend top-rated freelancers for whatever your brief is. It's a really easy way of just step-by-step going through and finding a freelancer. Then you've got specific platforms. So the first ones, the general ones, you can basically go in there and find a freelancer to do, almost anything. Right from designing a logo through to doing your social media for you, through to, going and outsourcing some products from like China for you or something like that. So they're the general platforms. With the specific platforms, they're where they're more focused on a certain range of tasks, they're not a broad range. So for example, if you're wanting writers to do content for you, WriterAccess is a really good platform to use. They have a whole lot of content writers, but it's just specific around writing content. So, but the nice thing about that is that's such a niche sort of area. You're not dealing with a lot of peripheral ones. You're dealing with just content writers. So you're less likely to find people that won't be able to do the task. So if you've got something really specific, sometimes these specific platforms are really good.
Yeah, and they're kind of experts in that field.
Experts in that field, exactly. Yeah. So another one is Gigster, an example of that specific platform. Gigster is anything to do with software development. So got a whole lot of developers that are freelancers on Gigster. Anything technical like that, coding wise, that you want done, that's the platform to go for. So have a search around. There's heaps of these sort of specific platforms as well. And then you can do the third one, which is company-based sort of options. So Human Proof Designs is an example that we use. They have a range of services. So they have, content writers, they'll have SEO people, they have developers that work for the company, but they'll be able to achieve the task for you within their company sort of role. They're not really set up as a platform, so to speak. You don't get to choose between 4 or 5 developers. They'll just have one that they'll assign to you. But the nice thing about those company-specific ones is then if you want to, if you're doing some development work with them and you want some SEO work done, it's nice because you can just, get them to quote up your SEO work as well. So it's sort of kept all within the one company, and that's why.
Is there much difference in price between?
No, I probably would say there isn't. Human Proof Designs are really well priced, and I think they would probably sit in amongst the middle of the range if you went for something like the Upwork. If you went for them, you would probably be end up paying a similar amount. I think it's probably much of a muchness with that sort of thing. You probably just don't get that flexibility in terms of range if you want to, go and find a number of freelancers to interview.
But it saves you time.
Saves you time, exactly. Yeah. And at the end of the day, the company one, they're set up to actually, they're set up as a company, so they're responsible. So if the developers doesn't do what you want them to do, you go and talk to the CEO of Human Proof Designs and say, well, look, I'm not happy. So, you've got that sort of extra level of backup. I think probably what I would suggest if you're starting off looking for freelancers is possibly using the the general platforms to begin with. So that's Upwork and Fiverr, because they are really set up well with that easy process to go through. And it's just sort of, you go through click, and paste your brief into it and away you go. So it's quite simple. But have a look around on the web. There's plenty more to look at. We'll put all of these ones that we've talked about today in the show notes so you can easily find those. And that's pretty much us for episode 102. If you're watching this on YouTube, give it a thumbs up or a comment, and remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel. And we'll look forward to seeing you in episode 103 next week. All right, guys. Well, look, nothing completely crashed down on us today. Nothing crashed down in the background. So we've been successful today.
Pretty good. Well, have a lovely week, everyone, and we'll catch up next week.
Sounds good. Cheers, guys.
Bye.
See you. Bye.